put it in the chat just to remind me to slow down if I am going a little bit too fast. So yeah, my name's Savion Agard. I've been working as a technical recruiter for nearly 7 years now, going on my 8th year. Specifically, I've been working anywhere from help desk to the CXO level. I originally cut my teeth on software development engineers, specifically the C#, ASP.NET, just basic web developers. Right now, I'm currently doing a little bit more on the RF engineering side, as well as, whatever my boss tells me to work on. So my goal today is just to give you a little bit of insight on what do recruiters really think when they're reviewing your resume, first and foremost. So the outline of today's topics are kind of really threefold. Your resume, what's truly important. From there, really talking about interviewing, what to say, what not to say while you're doing an interview. And from there, giving you a little bit more insight how a decision is made. So as I just said, the goal, give you insight into the recruiting process, give you the tools necessary to make your resume stand out, and give you confidence as you go through your interviews. And like my favorite movie, The Lion King, to be prepared. By going through this webinar, going through programs such as this, you're 10% ahead, you're 10 times ahead of your peers, just because they haven't had the training. They haven't spoken to recruiters. They don't know what's really going on in terms of the interview process. By working with BitTiger, you're 50 times more ahead than your counterparts. So any chance that you get to do a webinar such as this, any sort of educational program, I really suggest that you continue to do so, because it's only going to put you more ahead than anyone else. So since this is kind of a technical crowd, I'm really going to start there. And from there, how are technical resumes reviewed? From there, the non-technical review, just what recruiters in general think about when they're looking at a resume. Formatting, it's really not what you say, it's how you say it, how you present it. Is the information readable and understandable? And last but not least, social media in terms of how it connects to the recruiting process just in general. So kind of first things first, the technical review. So what should you actually put on your resume? I like to tell anybody that I'm talking to, Control F. When you submit your resume to any of these job boards, to any of these websites, when you're applying directly to a company's webpage, a recruiter is seeing, 500 resumes, a week. On average, when I first started, I was probably talking about to 30 to 50 different individuals a day. And these aren't, the best candidates. These aren't the worst candidates. This is just me trying to kind of figure out, what do they do and really learn the process. Now, on average, I'm still talking anywhere from 15 to 20 candidates, but I'm still looking at least to 50 to 60 resumes a day. So with that amount of time, the first thing I do, I hit Control F. I'm not sure if any of you guys, use that function in Word or in Google, but, if a manager is giving me a technical resume that they're looking for a C# developer, the first thing I'm looking for on a resume is Control F. Certain job boards, certain ATSs or applicant tracking systems, so when you submit your resume to any of these companies, they grade your resume sometime. Depending on the recruiter, they may hold weight to a resume that has 100% versus an 80%. If you submit your resume to Dice, Monster, Career Builder, some of the more regularly used job boards, that's the first thing that the system does. It has a specific algorithm that will take your resume compared to other it'll take your resume and compare it to other individuals. And so if I'm just doing, strictly on Indeed, hey, I'm looking for a software developer, I'm going to get 100 to 200 resumes back within a specific area. I'm not sure how they do it, but they do have a weight to your resume. So you want to make sure that your resume has these keywords listed. So like all tools, programs, and resources you use, you should list all tools, programs, and resources you used in your role on your resume. My rule of thumb is if you use it, you should put it on your resume. Just because your coworker uses a piece of technology, you shouldn't list it. Put things on your resume that relate specifically to the job that you've done. For example, if you're a software developer, I'm not sure what the mix of candidates that individuals we have today, but I will specifically kind of talk about software engineers. So if you're doing something else, feel free to just add it to the chat, and I'll try to use that as an example. If a piece of technology or an individual I've recruited for in the past, I just want to try to make it as relevant to you guys as possible. But specifically, if I'm looking for a mobile application developer, I'm looking either for an iOS developer, an Android developer, or someone who's a web developer that can create a specific website and make sure that it's formatted for mobile use. So, if you're a iOS developer, put iOS technologies on your resume that you're working with. I don't want to waste your time giving you a call for an iOS job and you've listed, hey, you know what? And you Google Play, Android, all these other technologies, you've put on your resume that you've never worked with, or you're putting technologies that your company is developing, but you yourself haven't done it or haven't actually touched it. So when you're listing specific tools, programs on your resume, you want to make sure that it represents exactly what you've done in the past and you're looking to continue working with. And that's just when we're searching for a resume. So how do you know what's important to put on your resume? Honestly, look at what look at similar job descriptions for positions that you're applying for. What do you spend most of your time at work doing? Have you ever saved your company money, time, or resources? These are specific things that recruiters are looking for on your resume. We're looking to see, what do you spend, a 40-hour workday doing? And we want you to be as specific as possible. If you're applying for a role, the first thing you must do is review the job description for the job description that you're applying for and add that technology onto your resume. You don't know how many people I've seen apply for a job, and specifically, back to an example, a software developer role, and these individuals are actually not software developers. They're just project managers, they're help desk technicians. They just saw that the company itself has a opportunity and they applied. I'm not reviewing your resume for other jobs and opportunities. Recruiters, hiring managers, individuals working at a company have specific tasks and roles that we're trying to accomplish, and we're looking to fill roles that will help us accomplish these goals. If you have the correct keywords listed on your resume, these are the individuals that we're going to deal with first. This is what we're looking for. So if you see a great company that you want to apply for, if they have a software engineering role, and they're looking, specifically, once again, if looking for a C# developer, and you are a C# developer, but your resume doesn't say anything about the technologies you've worked with, you're going to be glanced over. You're going to be looked over. A recruiter's not going to do all the work. So, what's really important is for you to understand what the client or whoever what the job is looking for and requesting. And like I said, talk about the scope of projects you've worked on and your day-to-day duties. If you didn't use it, touch it. If it's not in the realm of what you do on a day-to-day basis, don't list it, because anything that's on a resume is fair game. A resume is supposed to be a reflection of you and your responsibilities at a specific job. Use action verbs at the beginning of your sentences that, and, a list of them, hey, I addressed the hiring manager, or I addressed the board of directors because I gave a speech for, X, Y, and Z. I answered 100 calls per day. I arranged meetings between our sales director and our software developers. I collaborated with individuals outside of my department. I executed specific tasks. These words show ownership. These words show ownership of responsibilities. And so that's one of the things that you really want to be able to do. You want to be able to show that you're the one who did these things, that you're responsible. And, it's easy, and you always want to make sure it's in the proper tense. I will let you know, as a recruiter, this is one of the things that bothers me on a day-to-day basis. When someone's talking about something in the present tense, in one line, past tense, and then next line, present tense again. So rule of thumb, if it is a company that you're currently working at, responsible for addressing this individual, answering this amount of calls per day. Any job that you previously held, then you want to add it to the past tense. So what should you put on your resume? I'm going to show just 2 resumes really quickly, just of an example of this. I'll kind of give everyone a second to read through this job description. These are both software developers that worked for the Walt Disney Company. They worked at different locations, they had different responsibilities, but it really shows the difference in what is a good resume for a specific company. This individual right in front of you worked for the Walt Disney Company for over 3 years. As you see on the resume, there's a lot of information. They only had 2 bullet points about what they were doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Put as much information as possible to convey what your role and responsibilities are. However, it doesn't really go into enough detail, at least to me personally, about what their roles and responsibilities were. They worked with employees throughout the country to maintain and enhance web applications. But, how much of it was new development? How much of it was maintaining an application? Yes, I know that they built this application using the ASP.NET development stack, but was this person doing new development? How much of their time was just spent writing new code? It's decent. I'd look at this information. I'd reach out to this person, but I'm honestly not in love with the resume. Here's another resume for you to review. This person was actually only an intern with Disney for 6 months. It was their first position right out of college. It really goes into detail about different portions of their job. It goes into detail about the different technologies that they worked with on a day-to-day basis, or at least a specific project that they are working on. It talks about how each piece of technology was used. And that's something I love, because when I read a resume and I want to send it to the hiring manager, I don't have to delve for information anymore. This individual is giving all of this to me up front. So there are specific questions that I don't need to ask him. If he's worked with a specific technology, how was it utilized? When I see information such as this, it's so much easier for me to just say, wow, okay, I see exactly what you've done on your in your current role. So let's talk about some other stuff. Let's talk about why you're looking to leave. I don't have to really worry about the technology portion of their work just because it's so clearly listed out on their resume. So as I said, the winner, at least to me, is example B. B was easy to read. Short, concise bullet points. Try to get away from the paragraphs. If you're going to put on your resume, make sure it is important. Make sure it's very specific. Make sure it answers a question. Many job descriptions list out what the person's role and responsibility or what the day-to-day role for this position is. So you want to be able to answer it about what your previous roles were. Give specific examples. As I mentioned beforehand, the other resume, they listed their technology, even though it was an internship, but they let the recruiter, the hiring manager, know a little bit more about the environment and how specific pieces of technologies are utilized. It told a story. It told what department it was worked in, what the project they worked on, what their role and responsibilities were, and what they accomplished. At the end of the day, a company is hiring you to solve a problem. The more information you give about the work that you've done beforehand, it's so much easier to see, the big picture. The big picture and how you fit as a puzzle piece. If you think about it as a puzzle, it's easy for me to figure out what you did in relationship to the other pieces versus the first one was just, I worked here, we used a specific piece of technology and that was it. This one really delved extremely deep, and that's why I think that it's such a better resume. And both of them, like I said, they listed relevant technologies about the environment, what technologies were used, and as I mentioned beforehand, and I'm going to keep on saying it, Control F. That is what a recruiter uses to search for resumes. Your resume is weighted compared to other resumes. So the more technologies that you can list, the easier it is for me to find your resume. And so you want to be as specific as possible. So about to come into the non-technical review portion. Any questions? Okay, none are popping up. Going. All right, gone. All right, so how does a recruiter actually look at a resume? It's a little bit different than most organizations. So 2012 research from the Lattice showed that a recruiter spends 6 seconds on a resume. As I mentioned to you beforehand, when I first started, I'm looking at 50 to 60 resumes a day. I'm talking anywhere from 30 to 50 individuals. My manager got angry at me that I was talking to so many individuals because I didn't know what I was supposed to do yet. So on average, we're spending 6 seconds a seasoned recruiter because we're looking for specific technologies. We know what we're looking for. So going back to that Control F, that's what allows us to do it. If I see potential on a resume, I'll spend a minute looking at it, really delving deep, and to trying to figure out what a person does if I see a hint of a possibility of, what they're doing. So, but that's why it's really important for you to list your technologies, for you to really list out kind of what you've done. It allows the recruiter to be, to not only kind of figure out what you do and how you fit into into the bigger picture for your corporation, but it also allows us to, really make sure to kind of spend a little bit more time if your resume is not as detailed as some other individuals. It just helps us to kind of really paint a bigger picture. So what are things recruiters are looking at? Like I said, keyword search. To me, recruiters live and die by that. We're looking at your employment history. It's not necessarily kind of who you work for. Oh, so sorry, just got a question. So, all right, one of the questions were, will qualifying your accomplishment help to attract recruiters' attention? Yes, it really would, because yes, honestly, it really would, because if you think about it this way, maybe if someone's able to say, and kind of getting it out of technology, kind of using a sales example, if someone was to tell me, hey, I saved my company, for example, $1 million to me, or $1,000, $100,000, I saved my company X amount of money. To me, that's amazing. Or for sales, I sold, $1 million. That to me is amazing. You're putting specifics, and in the grand scheme of things, that may or may not be, exciting. If someone said, hey, I increased my company's views to our webpage by 1%, and you're Google, that's not a lot. But if you're a startup company and it's something new, if you're able to kind of quantify and qualify it, that's amazing, because it helps put everything into scale. So really, thank you so much for that question. We're looking at education. Did you graduate? It's a little bit easier in the tech world just because it's more so about what you've done. You don't necessarily need to go to school, but a lot of companies, they want to know, the pedigree of, your degree. I've had a lot of managers tell me beforehand, and whether I agree with them or not, that's one thing. But I've had a manager come up and tell me, said, hey, if a person can't do 4 years in school, how are they going to do 4 to 5 years with our company? We're looking to invest in someone long term. So some managers put a lot of weight on it. Some companies put a lot of weight on it. So we're just looking to see, that you have a degree or not. And another thing that we're looking for are red flags. Red flags are going to be another thing that I'll be talking about a lot. So, some of you may be asking, what specifically are some red flags? And another question, do we need to show our GPA on a resume? The rule of thumb is, if you got above a 3.5 or above a 3.3, show it. If you don't have above a certain, GPA, don't show it. At the end of the day, did you graduate? As someone who, I've worked with a lot of individuals, and, for example, Mark Zuckerberg, technically he didn't graduate Harvard. Technically he didn't have a degree, but he built a great product. It really doesn't matter. I know for a fact if he was to quit Facebook, quit, do something else, no one's checking their GPA. It matters a little bit when you're coming out of university, but after 2 to 3 years, no one really cares. So if it's below a certain grade point, don't show it. Feel free to show it, but 15 years from now, it's not really going to matter for most companies. I do know a couple of financial companies that it does matter, but that's a whole different story. So what are some red flags? 3 job changes in 1 year. That's an issue for a lot of people. It doesn't show stability. You may potentially be a contractor, and that's fine. It really depends on your field. But that is one of the things that we're looking for when we're scanning a resume. Gaps in employment. 6 months, year-long, 2-year gaps in your resume. That may or may not be an issue, but these are the things that we're looking for. Missing or outdated contact information. There have been a lot of times that someone will submit a resume and I try to email that person and there's a bounce back just because they forgot to put a dot before gmail.com. Small issues like that, it stands out. Spelling, grammar, and punctuation mistakes. Before I did this presentation today, I passed along to at least 2 other of my coworkers just to do a quick review for small things that, I may not see just because I've spent a lot of time with it on my resume. As someone who reviews resumes all day, I skim. When I work on my resume, I give it to someone else just because you don't know the attention to detail that another recruiter may have, a hiring manager may have. If you're working for a job as a project manager, as an accountant, attention to detail really does matter. But people do check. So it's definitely great to have an outside person review your resume, really look at it, just to make sure that you're not making any mistakes. Attention to detail failures, cover letters, objective statements. If there's one thing that you take away from tonight, please do not use objective statements on your resume. Please do not use objective statements on your resume. Please do not use objective statements on your resume. And here's the reason why. If there is an objective statement on your resume and you're reusing your resume for multiple roles, there's been a lot of individuals who submitted a resume saying, I'm looking for a role of a software developer with mobility. Well, you know what? I may be a recruiter for silence. You may be reusing these resumes and you just forget to make a change. You may think that, hey, I'm looking for a architect role when the position itself is a developer. So just remove objective statements. You can really put all that information in a cover letter, but with objective statements, a lot of people will put, hi, I'm a software engineer looking for a job. I'm a software developer looking for a job. I'm a business analyst looking for a job. Hi, I'm person X, and I'm looking for a role. I understand it. Your resume is out there in the world. It's out there on the job boards. I understand that you're looking for a job. Your objective statement isn't really helping your cause at all. So, remove it. That's just extra space on your resume that you could have put an extra 2 or 3 bullet points that really conveys what you do on a day-to-day basis. Failure to follow directions. There are 2 different types of resumes. There's a chronological resume and a functional resume. Chronological resume is the standard, especially here in the United States. Make sure that your resume starts off with the role that you're currently doing and ends with your first role or whatever is the last position that you choose to share. Most companies typically say 10 years at minimum as you guys continue to progress in your schooling or also in your careers. So, and too much personal information, please no age, no date of births, no social security numbers, none of that stuff. So here are 2 resumes. This is actually the same resume, kind of showed 2 different ways. On the left, it's really hard to see. A basic skill section, the question is, do we need to have a basic skill section or is it just extra? It's extra. If you want to just list all the technologies that you've worked with, try to keep it as small as, not necessarily as small as possible. If you're writing your resume correctly, all that information is going to be within the resume. But it doesn't hurt to have. Just make sure that it's relevant to the role that you're doing. If you're changing careers and you're no longer going to be a developer, don't list, all these developer skills. And I'll come back to that one about a company with 5 to 7 years related experience. That's a really good question. Please make sure that I answer that one. All right, but so just for an example, here are 2 different resumes, and they're actually sharing, it's the same information. The left one is a what I call the functional resume. The right one is more chronological. And this is just a heat map. And I really love this resume. It's been published on Business Insider multiple times in terms of what a recruiters are looking at. And I really wanted you to kind of have a glance to see kind of some of this very specific questions. Perfect. So going into it. So what does a recruiter see? In initial glance, there's experience kind of related to the job, right? That's kind of that section. We're jumping in. This is your most recent position. This is where we're really hitting that Control F. Relevant work experience. That's kind of where that objective statement is. It's a quick glance. We're still doing that Control F. A lot of individuals, have a skill section at the top of the resume. These are just different areas that I know for a fact that as a recruiter and I'm looking at it, I know specifically what they're seeing, what they're staring at, right? From their previous employment, the first things first, we're looking to see, do you have the skills that you're having, the skills that we're currently looking for in your current role. We're looking to see how long you've worked with an organization. From there, and going back to the 5 to 7 years of experience, right? So let's just say you're only at your current company for 1 to 2 years. Does that mean, but we're looking for 5 to 7. So that means we have to jump back. We have to look further. We have to review your resume, but we want to make sure that it's relevant. Education, that's the bottom. So kind of really going back real quick to that, job description with 5 to 7 years related experience, what we're looking for is how long have you been doing this? Are you a junior, mid-level, or senior developer? Depending on the organization, they're looking for someone with, for example, 7 years pure Java development. That is the only thing that they're looking for. Other companies, well, if you have 5 years or 4 years of Java development experience, but you started off your career as a .NET developer, you're still using this object-oriented programming, then okay, it's fine. Some companies will stretch it. It really all depends on the manager. But really what we're looking for is, how long have you been working? How long have you used the technology? Sometimes I've sent over someone with 4 years of experience, and I've got a hire, or I've, had someone join our team. It really depends on the manager, but, it doesn't hurt to apply and really push yourself a little bit further. There were a couple of additional questions for individuals with looking for no work experience. I'm definitely going to cover that in a little bit. Is cover letter necessary for technical job internship applications? It really depends. It kind of goes back to the thing I was saying earlier, follow directions. If they're asking for a cover letter, make sure you have a cover letter. If you have no experience whatsoever, a cover letter is really important because, or if you're switching careers, switching fields, you're looking to do something new, a cover letter is really important only because it's your experience. It's your way of explaining why you're looking to do something, how you're looking to do something. So it's really all on a case-by-case basis. Me personally, unless I'm an internal recruiter and I have a hiring manager specifically asking me to review a cover letter, I typically don't look at them. I'm more technical. I'm more so focused on what have you done. But if you have no experience, if you're switching, career paths, a cover letter is a great way to explain why you're doing something, and some information that may or may not be expressed in your resume. Okay. So formatting, I hope everyone's been able to see a resume before, but this is, to me, what I call the perfect resume. And this is another heat map one. This is one of the ones I love the most. A resume is really broken down to a couple of sections. You have your header. This has the objective statement / technical skills section that you can, take it or leave it depending on the recruiter. I say leave it, but that's really all on, the individual's, personality and, what they feel. Your professional experience, which is kind of that meat and bones, and your education, technical skills section. And I think I can annotate real quick. So as I was saying beforehand, these are sorry, I'm trying to get red pen. All right, there you go. These are the really important things. These are the heat maps. This is what a recruiter, in that 6 seconds, there was something that we saw that we really liked that opened up your resume. So you're officially past the 6-second mark. Now you're in the 7 to 60-second mark. This is what we're looking at, that we're going to see if we're going to be able to contact you. How long have you been working for? These are kind of the really red flag sections. Okay. Oop. Having a little bit of technical difficulty. Oh, there we go. All right, so perfect. So as I was saying beforehand, the header. What should be on your resume? What does a recruiter see? We're looking for your name, email, where you're located. Name, who you are, email, and please, normal emails. Location. Rule of thumb, at least for me, if you're not within a 15 to 20 mile radius, don't put your location. Because a recruiter is really thinking, do we have to have this person relocate? There have been a lot of individuals that I've decided to X out just because they were too far away. So if you're within 15 to 20 miles of a job that you're looking to be in, leave it. If not, leave it blank. The body of the resume, company name, dates of employment, please list the month and a year so we can get a better example of how long you've worked with the organization. Your title, as I mentioned, chronological order and easy formatting. Bullet points, quick sentences, use numbers, symbols on your resume. No fancy graphics, no logos, and try to keep it as appropriate as possible to your industry. So in terms of employment history, this is kind of one of the things that Mike and I actually had a conversation about that we really want to touch upon. It's not necessarily, when we say employment history, who you worked for, we're not really just checking the name brand. If you work for Apple, that's amazing. If you work for Google, that's amazing. But it really depends on your industry. Like, you and I, or I'm saying really large names right now that's kind of universally known. But if you have an opportunity to work for, I work right now in the telecom industry. So mobility has a really strong name there. If I'm looking for other telecom companies, or I'm looking for individuals to work for us that has telecom experience, the company name does matter then, if they're trying to keep it in the same industry. And someone who works for Apple per se has very limited responsibilities versus someone who works for a startup company, where they have to do multiple hats because it's a small team. So that's kind of what we're looking for when we're looking at who someone's worked for. Just because, what Apple and Google has 50 to 1,000 people to work on, a smaller company will not. And for some companies, that's a really good thing, because some companies, they need someone who has that kind of startup mentality, doesn't mind putting their hands in the fire. So that's what we're looking for when we're checking about, the name of a company. Title, your role, responsibilities, as I mentioned before, and how long you've worked there. So red flags, as I mentioned, length of employment. If every position that you've worked at has only been 2 to 3 months, to me, that's a red flag. Why are you jumping so long? This is kind of what we're looking for. If there's a 6-month gap in your resume, is it just because you were unemployed? Were you working in another field? You just don't want to list it? These are the things that we start thinking of as recruiters, trying to figure out, will this person be a good fit for the company? Your resume doesn't match the job description that you're applying for. That's a really big issue for us. If you're applying for a job, I assume that you've read the job description, and if you haven't, that's an issue. And your resume doesn't match social media. I'll be 100% honest with you. Like a lot of recruiters, I'll go on LinkedIn, I will look at an individual's resume, and I'll check to see how it compares to their LinkedIn profile. If I see different responsibilities because someone changed their resume to match the job that they're applying for completely, to me, that's a red flag, because now I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what is true, what's a lie. Titles, between a software engineer and a software developer, that doesn't bother me so much on a resume. But when they do background verifications, you want to make sure you have the specific exact title that you actually had. Is a brief description of the company that I work for helpful? It depends. Sometimes, sometimes I don't mind reading it. It helps me as a recruiter just say, oh, that's interesting. It really depends. So if you could keep it within, 1 to 2 sentences, I say fine. If, I don't need the about us section of what's on a company's webpage because I can Google it and find out. How do you think about a mom with a gap of 3 years? That's a really good question. And actually, that's another conversation altogether in terms of, what can be asked and not in an interview. Me personally, I don't mind. Some employers do mind, but you have a legitimate reason for re-entering the workforce, or I'm sorry, let me not say legitimate, because anyone has their reasons for not, going into the workforce. But it is I personally don't mind if this individual has kind of kept up with their skills perfect. If they haven't and they're looking to re-enter, if you were a high-level architect, and specifically in technology, if you were a high-level architect using, a specific piece of technology moves super quickly. So if that person doesn't mind, saying, hey, I'll be a developer. Perfect. I'm more likely to go with you. I may not go exactly on par with what you've done beforehand, only because it's taken, you've been out of the workforce for a while. However, for an individual who was, let's just say, a technical writer, a business analyst, the technologies may change that they use on a day-to-day basis. However, the skills are more or less the same. So if I have you on the phone, that means I saw the gap in employment, and I saw something in your resume that made me want to call you back. If you're applying for a lot of positions and people are just seeing the gap, you may want to try throwing in a couple of resumes that say, hey, I decided to stay at home. Here are some of the articles that I've read. Here's how I kind of kept my skills while I've been away, and now I'm looking to re-enter. So, I really don't mind the gap as long as there's a story behind it other than I just didn't feel like working. So now going back to the other question that was asked earlier, no formal work experience. Internships are real jobs. If you've never had an internship beforehand, but you have an engineering background in college, those co-ops, those are real jobs. College programs and projects, your research papers, your case studies, anything that you've done that has to do with the job that you're looking to apply for, those are real jobs, no matter what anyone says. So you now have a basis for your resume. And cover letters, it details what you bring to the table. For instance, when I fell into recruiting, I was a business major in college, and long story short, someone gave me a job to interview as a recruiter. And the first thing they said to me was, what recruiting experience do you have? None whatsoever. But my response to them, which was 100% true, I went back to college. I played rugby in college. This is America. No one plays rugby. I talked about how I was recruiting other individuals to come play the sport that they've never done before. I talked about how I detailed to them what was important about rugby and just, all the quote unquote sales tactics I use, and the manager loved it. And that's how I was able to get this position. If you don't have anything, another question, may I list the projects in boot camp? If you have nothing else on your resume, definitely list it. List how all the other classes that you've done. And that's where the conversion between cover letter and resume really come into help. Maybe you only have a couple of bullet points on your actual resume specifically about bootcamp, but on your cover letter you say, hey, what, I'm a developer, what I did beforehand, I took a summer course, or I took a course just to help develop my skills. Here's what I learned in this bootcamp program, and you go into full detail. And then on your resume, just as bootcamp, you list the technologies that you use. You listed specifically how you use it on outside projects. I hope that answered your question. And so here's an example that I found online when I was actually looking for a Java developer the other day. this individual, they listed the Sudoku game, they listed the stenography program. This was literally just one project that they did in class. Me personally, I don't like the Java section that's on top. I love the actual, the bottom one that was actually written in C#.net. It just went into a little bit more detail about the technology. I liked it a lot more. So this is an example. This individual had 3 or 4 of these listed throughout their and that was their resume. And this is an example of how if you don't have any real world, or if you don't have any quote unquote real world work experience, or if you're transitioning jobs, how this is an excellent example of listing some of the work that you've done in school through this boot camp, through different projects, and how you can use that as the basis to create your first resume. And then, so what does a recruiter see? List, if you have a great school, list everything. If you have your degree in another field, let's just say, hey, I was a history major, but I'm looking for a, software development project or a software development job. I may not put, I had my Bachelor's of Science in Computer and Information Sciences. I may just say Cornell University, just using, an example a little bit close to home. And here's, me and Mike had a little bit of a conversation about this, just because I know a lot of the individuals here, got their bachelor's, at least a minimum, overseas. A lot of U.S. recruiters may or may not know about the university you went to, but if you have your degree in a comparable, program, science and engineering, you may not want to list the name of your school, only because they may not know it. And at a later date, you're going to have a conversation with them about where you got your degree. And it's not necessarily that you got your degree overseas. As a recruiter, the first thing I think of is, the background check process. If we're going to have to verify your education, the process itself takes an additional 2 to 3 weeks if someone's overseas. It's a little bit more of a headache. And if, this is your resume, this is the first time I'm seeing your resume, you don't want to disqualify yourself just because they may be on a time crunch. You want them to fall in love with you. But, if you're very prideful about your school and you want to list your school, there's nothing wrong with that. This is just, me personally working on the agency side of recruiting versus being an in-house recruiter. When I was in an in-house recruiter, it didn't matter to me. On the agency side, it mattered a little bit. So there's nothing wrong with it, but, something you may want to take into consideration. And just for fun, I want to show you a couple of resumes that recruiters hate seeing. On the left, this is okay. All this extra information on the side, you could throw that at the bottom of the resume. There's really no need for it. This is, and mind you, these are graphic designers. These 2 resumes are, UI, UX designers. So they're allowed to be a little bit more creative. But, we really want to know the month and date of employment. 2014 to present, that really doesn't do anything for me. 2014 to present, maybe this ended in 2015 and they haven't updated their resume. I personally don't like it. The references on the side, we're going to ask for your references at the end of the day. Remove it. Personally, I hate both of these resumes. And yeah, that's just me personally. So, really try to keep your resume as standard as possible. Let's see. Again, very creative resumes, looks great on paper, visually eye-popping. Personally, hate it. Definitely no. But this person, like I mentioned, is a graphic design artist. Like, this is an amazing resume to see. If I was looking for a graphic designer, it makes it pop, but once again, you're applying for a job in a specific industry. Make sure you follow the conventions of that industry. So quick no-nos, as I mentioned, Word document or PDF, please. No text documents. Honestly, try no Google Docs, just because sometimes when it converts over the Word, it's not as clear. So Word document or PDF. No headshot on your resume. It's a standard convention, outside of the United States. Here, I'll be 100% honest, it could get us in a recruiter or an agency into legal troubles. I try to stay away from it. No birthdays, potential legal trap falls as a recruiter. If I see a birthday on a resume, I automatically, pass it by just because I don't want to deal with any legal issues. No social security number. I've seen it 2 or 3 times on resumes. Just a warning, please do not do that. And as I mentioned, no objective statement. The top part of your resume is prime real estate. As I mentioned, we're only spending 6 seconds on your resume. If I'm spending 2 seconds on the top of your resume, that's 2 seconds I could have been looking at somewhere else that could have made you stand out as a great company. Recruiters get it. You're looking for a job. A blanket objective statement basically saying, hey, I'm looking for a job. It doesn't help you, doesn't help your chances. Prime real estate is taken up. If there's something that you feel you must get off your chest to explain something, if you're really trying to sell yourself, then use a cover letter, make it 3 paragraphs long or fill up an entire page, really sell yourself there. But most recruiters, pure recruiters that aren't hiring managers, and if they haven't asked for it, we're not looking at your cover letter. We're going to the quote unquote meat and potatoes. Social media. As I mentioned, recruiters are searching your social media. I'm checking to see if your LinkedIn kind of matches up to your resume. I'm looking for additional information that you may have on your LinkedIn, not your resume. Facebook and Twitter, just to let you guys know, a lot of these social media websites, if you're applying to dice.com, they have these, what they call a social media search. So if you use the same email for your, and I'm sorry, Dice is called like their open web search. If you use the same email address for your Twitter, your Facebook, your GitHub, they actually use your email address from Dice, Monster, and Career Builder and go search these sites for your resumes. There have been a lot of resumes that I've looked at where where they say, I hate my job on a day-to-day basis. They spew a lot of real negativity. So you want to be careful about what you're putting online because, recruiters are looking at these social media sites to get a little bit more information. And sometimes we're not even looking for it. It just pops up. So, So a resume is just an example of your experience. The interview is where you really fill in the blank and give fuller details. So I'm about to go into the interview section. Does anyone have any kind of last second questions about resumes? Going, gone. All right. So interviewing, what to say and what not to say. There are really 2 types of interviews. There are behavioral interviews and technical interviews, or they're going to ask you kind of behavioral questions, technical questions. So here's some examples of behavioral questions. Give me an example where you had to do X. Tell me about a time you failed at work. Describe a stressful situation. These are the questions most people hate answering the most. I know personally I do. The purpose of these questions are to really see how you perform under pressure. I was reading today as I was prepping for this. Whole Foods, they used to ask individuals, would you rather face one duck the size of a horse or 100 horses the size of one duck? 100 horses the size of a duck, or one duck the size of a horse. If you're going to go into a Deloitte sort of company, they may ask you, how many basketballs can you fit inside of this room, or whatever room that you guys are in? They're asking you these questions to see how you think. They're asking these questions to really help determine what your actual role and responsibilities are. If I'm asking, you a question, tell me an example of what you do on a day-to-day basis, and you're listing off everything under the sun, but nothing that's what's listed on your resume, that's an issue. That's a red flag. They help to determine how you ended up in your current role. So, this is what I call the elevator, the tell me about yourself question. You really want to have a 60-second elevator pitch. When someone asks you, and this is the first thing that anytime I bring a person in for an in-person interview, is tell me about yourself. I don't care about your dog. I don't care about kind of how you moved to where you currently are. I'm looking for your work history. Anything that you say in an interview, make sure you bring it back to the interview itself. Make sure you bring it back to the specific role, and always end by, why you're interested in this specific role. How does this current role help you in your career, help you move forward? Is this company being innovative in what they're doing? Are they using new technologies? No recruiter wants to hear, well, I hate my current boss. However much true it might be, we want to see why we should hire you, what value add that you have in the past, and what value are you going to bring to the future. We're looking to see your motivations for moving, and also how comfortable are you with answering questions. You don't know how many individuals I'll ask, tell me can you talk to me just a little bit about your software development experience? The first thing they say is, well, it's on my resume. A person like that is automatically -2 points in my book, because if you won't explain the basics to me, how can I expect you to explain yourself to the hiring manager? Because the hiring manager is literally going to ask you the same questions I'm asking you, if not with a little bit more detail. So if you're looking for a job and you're not willing to kind of quote unquote do this dance, it looks badly on you. So make sure that you're able to answer these questions to the fullest extent. And especially if you don't have any experience, as I mentioned beforehand, the person had a Java development experience and .NET development experience who was an intern. If I ask them what their software development experience is, I don't mind them saying, hey, just to be 100% honest, I don't have any work experience. However, here's a program that I developed on the side for fun. Here's some projects that I worked on. Here's what I'm passionate about, like why I'm looking to get into software development. And these things will help sell yourself. So, how to answer these questions, like I said, tell a story, beginning, middle, and end. Make sure you have an end. As someone who does a lot of run-on sentences, trust me, you're telling a story and all your answers are just doing that. Remember the STAR method. If another key takeaway, situation, task, action, and result. The situation, if you do have any work experience, maybe, we had a specific project under that had a specific deadline. My task was to execute this action. Here's how I did it. The result was we saved the company money. We met the deadline. We met the on time or even before time. Try to do everything as STAR, which is you have a beginning, you have a middle, and end. And trust me, everyone will be very impressed in your ability to actually answer these questions. So for technical questions, have you used X? How is it used? I see that you listed blank on your resume. Tell me more about it. What were your responsibilities? These are kind of the nitty-gritties that managers are really looking for, especially if you are a technical individual. We're looking to see if you're a developer, how you developed an application, what is the process. Everyone has different development styles. Everyone has different technical background. So we're just trying to figure out what exactly have you done, because nowadays anyone could be a software developer, anyone could be an iOS developer, anyone could do these amazing things and bring it to the world really quickly. But with that being said, there are 1,000,001 ways to do it, and some ways are better than others, as well as if you're a C# developer, you may not work for a Java house. If you're looking for a project manager role, but you've never done any project management, well, that's an issue in itself, but, maybe we can find a fit for you elsewhere within the team. So as I mentioned, just believe you don't believe in something doesn't mean it's not true. Great quote by Albert Einstein. As recruiters, just because you believe that you're an amazing developer doesn't mean that it's true. Just because you believe in something doesn't mean it's true. And we're looking for you to dispel that thought from us. So, these questions are really used as a background check. Are you who you say you are? Does your skills meet our company standards? Do you do things the same way our company does? Are you doing something completely unique? And, or we may be doing something completely unique and we're looking for individuals to think outside the box. Are you overqualified or underqualified? And, as I mentioned, do you want this position? Are you answering these questions for us? Are you just saying, yeah, I've done it. That doesn't help us. That doesn't give us enough information to see if you will do well in this role. So, yeah. And so technical recruiters aren't technical. I've never developed in, actually, that's not true. I've developed very little in my life. I've taken development classes. I'm looking to continue and learn. However, I deal with high-level architects, I deal with high-level individuals, and I know enough that I'm able to kind of fake it for an initial interview. I'm looking for you to show me your expertise. I'm looking for you to really impress upon me that you're able to do the role. Because if you can't impress upon me that you can't do a specific task, then how are you going to impress the manager? So, this is a really great quote that I really love in terms of, what recruiters are looking for. Create a world in front of your readers where they can believe, touch, feel, see, move, else they're likely to move on to another book. That's what we're looking for. Do not say, yes, it is on the resume. The more details you're able to provide a recruiter, I'm going to feel more comfortable and I'm going to share your resume. One of the things I always tell everyone, the best way of really showing your mastery of the subject is if you're able to teach it. So if you're able to tell me, a recruiter who's not technical in enough sense that I feel comfortable understanding what you do, that really shows to me that you know what you're doing, and I'm definitely going to send you along to the manager. And, when you're answering these questions, really kind of answer the 5 W's. What happened? Who was involved? Why did this happen? What was involved? When did it take place? These are the sort of questions that we're looking for. With the first round interview conducted by HR with behavior questions or the hiring manager? It really depends. That's a really great question. As a recruiter, as a technical recruiter, for me, it depends. When I'm working in-house for a company, I'll ask both technical questions as well as behavioral questions, just because I'm really looking for a cultural fit more so than anything else, as well as a technical fit, and really figuring out how you fit into a big picture. When I'm on the agency side and I'm completely, just looking for technical folks to share with companies, I'll tend to stick a little bit more on the technical side and let the other organizations do the more behavioral questions, just because they're really in the environment. So for me as a technical recruiter on the agency side, I'm really looking just to see if you're going to answer the questions and what your technical expertise are. But when they're really in-house, when you're doing kind of like a panel interview or, multiple interviews, then some individuals are really going to ask those behavioral questions. And so one of the biggest, depending on the size of your company, a lot of companies' HR is really just payroll and benefits. They may have an in-house recruiter and then they'll do the recruiting. Or, the HR generalist may be a HR person as well as a recruiter. So, it really all depends. Yeah, it really all depends on the organization. So remember to slow down. I just realized I kind of picked up my speed, but I just realized kind of the time. So I want to make sure that we leave enough time for everyone to ask questions. But as you're going through an interview, make sure that you slow down. You want to convey confidence. When someone talks really fast like this, they come across a little bit jittery. You want to be able to just slow down, take a deep breath. If you think you're going too fast, chances are you definitely are. If you think you're going slow, chances are you're going faster than you think you are. So really slow down. There's nothing wrong with taking a quick breath. If a manager asks you a question, really take a quick breath. Take 2 or 3 seconds to really think about the question, and then get your answer. And then make sure you have your answer. It's not a competition. You're not in a race. Take time and really develop an answer. Now, mind you, if you take 30 seconds to a minute, that may seem that's actually a really long period of time. But take a quick breath, maybe 2, and then answer your question. Check in with yourself as you're going through it, even if you're anxious, to really slow down and make sure that you're developing well thought out responses to their questions. So interviewing red flags, at least for me, is an individual never explain why they wanted a role. If you applied for a position just because you wanted a job, is it because you like the position? Do you like the company? What about it, interests you? They didn't do any research about the company. Just to be 100, I work for a company right now called Mobility. We're a telecom infrastructure company. We build cell towers, small and large cell towers. When I first interviewed with the company, that's all I knew. I've been working with this company for 6 months now. That's still all I know. I know the general sense. I don't need to know every single thing. I don't need to know how they do it, because I'm not looking for a role as a RF engineer or as a wireless engineer. I don't know, specifically what makes our company, the pieces of technology that we use that make them completely different in terms of the cell tower space. That's not my role. But when I walked into the interview, I just said, hey, I know you guys build cell towers for, other organizations such as Sprint, Nextel, or I'm sorry, Nextel's not around, Sprint, T-Mobile, Verizon. And I was able to at least say the bare minimum. If someone just walked in and they say, I don't know what you guys do, I just know you have a software development job, that's an automatic no. So every company has an About Us section. Print that off, have that in your binder. Just know that bare minimum, please, as you're interviewing for a company. And if it's a small startup company that you're applying for, have a conversation like, no, honestly, I saw the role. I saw that you're a startup company. I saw that you're trying to operate in this space. What is the problem you're trying to solve? Just because I wasn't able to figure that out from the company website, that's okay. Just know something about the organization. Make sure you ask questions. At the end of the interview, I like to tell everyone, have 2 or 3 questions. What is this person, you're looking to hire this role, how are they going to fit in with the organization? What are you looking for this person to accomplish, within the first 90 days? How does this person fit into the overall organization, or, for the very specific project that you looking to hire somebody? Something basic, something interesting. Ask one question about the company, but just have these questions written out before you go into the interview. And there is nothing wrong with asking having these questions pre-written out. And please, as you go into interviews, bring a notepad, take notes, show that you're engaged. And hiring committees, what are they thinking? So there are kind of really 3 different players in terms of, the hiring committee and the hiring group. You may have an executive or president. They're looking to make sure that you're a team player, that you believe in the company and the culture. These individuals, they're not going to be interacting with you on a day-to-day basis. They're really looking for cultural fit. They're trusting the hiring manager to really be able to really choose the right individuals. Your direct manager, they're looking to make sure that you're able to get the job done on time. When they're asking these questions, they're looking to see kind of what you've done in the past and, make sure that you're a good fit for the team and that you have a problem or if you're able to fix a specific problem that they have. Your peers, typically it's either going to be a peer or direct manager who's interviewing you. And especially with your peers, they want to make sure that you're able to do the day-to-day aspects of your job because your job affects them. So these are three different individuals, that kind of play a part as you're interviewing. You may not meet the executive or the president unless it's a really small company, but just know, how you interact with a peer during an interview might be slightly different than a direct manager and kind of really what they're trying to get out of you. And so, kind of quick tips, make sure you know what the company does. Try to see if you know who the clients for the company are. Know why you're taking the job interview. Because, many individuals will, a lot of recruiters, a lot of hiring managers will ask you, like, why do you want this job? I want a job because I'm looking for a job is not a great answer. It's not an answer. Know the purpose for you taking the interview. If you're unhappy with your current environment, it's okay to say, you don't want to just say, hey, I'm unhappy here because you don't know what the company culture is going to be. So have a really well thought out, prepared question. Don't try to fit the culture, be yourself. Because let's just say you actually get the job and you're just trying to play the part to get the job. Well, you're going to have to play the part. And, on average, we spend more time at work than we do at home. So don't try to fit the culture. Just be yourself and make sure that it's the right cultural fit. As I mentioned beforehand, there's a fine line between being excited, eager, and desperate. Nobody likes desperate. No one. Eager is all right, but we want you to be excited. We want you to want the job. There's a fine line, but just make sure you know it. Remember the STAR: situation, task, action, and response, and results when you're giving a response to the hiring managers or whoever's interviewing you. And hiring managers want to hire people who want to work for them. At the end of the interview, after you ask your questions, ask them, hey, is there anything specific that I didn't answer or that I didn't answer that you'd like a little bit more clarification on? Or is there anything I could expound upon? And let them know, like, hey, honestly, I think it's a good cultural fit. I think based off of the questions, I think that I could do the job and I'm really interested in the role. Let them know that you want them. It's, if you let them know that you want the job, that's 2 or 3 points higher than someone else who just said, why are you taking the interview? Oh, because, I'm just looking for a job. You want to work with them specifically. And yeah, that's really it on my front, I think.